So you're new to Genshin, you do a 10 pull in the current banner, and while you don't get a 5-star, you do get 4-star Faruzan. Now what do you get with Faruzan besides the delusional granny of Genshin? Well, Faruzan is a bow-wielding animo user whose burst can actually help buff your other animo damage dealers. I'm Kessie, Manga, whatever the hell you want to call me. And because not everybody is AR60 with 36-star Abyss, I decided that I was going to make videos that hopefully anybody can understand. So if you do learn something from this video, please like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And with that being said, let's get into this video on the Granny of Genshin, Faruzan. Okay, so just like we do in every single one of these videos, we are going to first take a look at the build of the specific character that I'm using for this video. One, it could be a look at a later build, which in this case it's not. But two, if my Faruzan, if my character is hitting more damage than yours, it could be that mine has a higher leveled weapon, could just be higher level talents, whatever the case may be, it will give you an idea of what the difference can be. My Faruzan is level 50 out of 60 with 593 attack and no EM. I'm not really swirling much with this Faruzan, at least I'm not intending to. Her crit split is 8.5 over 57, and her energy recharge is 184.6. Now, this is definitely more of a support build for Faruzan, where I want to be using her burst as much as possible. I do have a level 70 Favonius Warbow on her, and we'll talk more about this weapon whenever we get to that section of the video. I am running 4-piece Exile, which this is going to be her best beginner set, kind of. We'll talk about that whenever we get to the artifact set, but for this video, I am running Exile. Now, my Faruzan is C4, but later in the video, I am going to stop to mention her C6 and why. Most people say that her, like Sara, is only good at C6, or their true utility, their best buffing comes with C6, and her talents are 154. Plus, Faruzan has like really, really cool eyes. She's a little delusional, but her eyes are cool. Okay, so first we are going to go look at her normal attack, her skill, and her burst. Okay, so her normal attacks. So she's going to have a relatively normal, uncharged normal attack for a bow user, where she is going to do a 1, 2, 3, 4 shot with her normal attacks. And then her charge attack is going to have animo infused. Now, it's not going to do any grouping normally. That's where her skill comes into play. So whenever we use her skill, she is going to do an instance of AoE animo damage. It's not a very big AoE, it's actually rather small, but it's going to give her these marks. Now, my Faruzan has 2 marks here because of her C1, which gives me an extra charge shot with her skill. So it is going to create this pressurized capsule where whenever it hits an enemy or the ground, wherever it hits, it is going to do a sucking effect that is going to pull enemies in. It is going to swirl any elements that are present, and it is going to do a little bit of grouping. So you see here that we can just kind of use it, shoot the enemies. It's going to kind of move them in together. It's going to produce some energy for Faruzan. She is energy hungry, which is why we need a lot of energy recharge on her. So this is just a lot of examples of using her skill to kind of crowd control, group enemies together, and what it does. Now, you do notice that the charged attacks are not taking as long. Faruzan has a passive, I believe it's her first passive, that whenever you use her skill, it has a 60% decrease in the time it takes for a charged attack after you use her skill, while you have the pressurized capsule effect in play. So next, we're going to talk about her burst. Now, her burst is going to summon this polyhedron, this animo polyhedron, that is going to move in a triangular shape. When it gets to each corner of the triangle, it is going to do a pulse. Now, this pulse is not going to actually do animo damage. In fact, instead, it is going to put a status on the enemy. It is going to decrease their animo resistance, and your character that is in that pulse as well is going to get an increase in animo damage. Now, when she does first do it, it will do an instance of AoE animo damage, but after that, it won't. It will not actually do the pulse on each of the corners, or the pulse on each of the corners will not do animo damage. Only the initial use of the burst will do an animo AoE damage. So as you can see, whenever we use her burst, her charge shots with her skill are going to do more damage because the enemies now have a decrease to animo resistance, and Faruzan is getting an increase in animo damage whenever she is in the area of the triangular shape that the polyhedron is in and it pulses. It will give her that animo damage buff. Now, this polyhedron and the effect of the animo damage buff does stay around if you put another character in, which is where her buffing ability is really, really good. So if we were to put another animo damage dealer in during this, which we will later on, then you would be getting the increase of animo damage for that character. So you can build Faruzan for pure support, where you're going to be having her burst up as much as possible with energy recharge, to then swap to another character that's animo to have them do your damage. Now I do want to read off her second passive, her Ascension 4 passive, which if I send it Faruzan one more time, I would get it. When a character affected by her burst, deal animo damage using a normal, plunging, elemental skill, or elemental burst to opponents, they will gain an effect that will give an increase in attack based on Faruzan's base attack, which is going to be her base attack and her weapon's base attack. So what this means is every single time her burst gets to one of those corners, it will give an attack buff to the character. If your character is near the corner within its AoE of effect, it will give them the attack bonus based on Faruzan's attack. So the number that we need to look at for the attack bonus is going to be the white number. So in this case, 462. It is going to be 32% of this white number will go to your character doing the animo damage. So right now it is 462 because we have Favonius Warbow. If we were to say swap to something like a level 90 Skyward Harp, then it's going to go way up, meaning that the attack bonus is going to be higher. Now, if that's the case, you do still have to worry about energy recharge on Faruzan because you want to have her burst as ready as possible at all possible times. So typically, unless you have really good artifacts and a really high energy recharge, then just running the Favonius Warbow is going to be best. And speaking of the Favonius Warbow, it is time to look at weapons. So I do have a level 70 Favonius Warbow on Faruzan. Now, normally I don't say anything about 4-star weapons unless they're craftable, but when you complete the Animo Archon quest, you are given a Favonius Warbow for free. So you will have this weapon if you have finished the Animo Archon quest. So you can definitely give this weapon to Faruzan if you're that far in the game. If you're not that far in the game and you're using Faruzan for damage, then Slingshot is going to be okay for a beginner. There are going to be better options very quickly. Again, you get the free Favonius Warbow. Stick with that one if you have it. If you don't have it yet, then throwing on a Slingshot will be okay for a beginner, for like the early stages of the game. For a beginner artifact set, we are doing 4-piece Exile. Now, if you have 2-piece Exile, 2-piece Scholar, then that might be better because it's going to give another 20% energy recharge to Faruzan. And the Exile's 4-piece set really only helps your other characters, not Faruzan. The 2-piece set is great. 4-piece set helps your other characters. If you have 2-piece Scholar, throw that in there instead. So for your main stats, you want to do an energy recharge Sands. You want to do like an animo damage bonus goblet, and then you want to do a crit rate circlet, especially if you're running Favonius Warbow, because crits with a Favonius Warbow produce more energy. So that is why we want to have a crit rate on here, so that way hopefully you're hitting more crits. We aren't necessarily worried about the damage. We want the number of crits to go up, so we want a higher crit rate. And as you can see right here on the Favonius Warbow, crit hits have a 70% chance to generate a small amount of elemental particles, which will generate 6 energy for the character. This is R2. I think at R1 it's 60%. So you still want to have a crit rate on here because of this passive with Favonius Warbow. So for a beginner-friendly party, and the way that these work is they are assuming the only character that you've ever pulled is Faruzan. You did one wish on the current banner and you got Faruzan. So we're going to make the rest of the party with free characters that the game gives you. So we're going to have Faruzan, of course. Then we're going to have Animo Traveler. Then we're going to have Kaya and Xiangling. Kaya you can swap out for Barbara if you want a little bit of healing, because you're still going to be able to cause vaporize reactions with that group. So essentially the way that this party is going to work is that we are going to be using Xiangling's off-field burst, Kaya's off-field burst, Faruzan's burst and skill to kind of group a little bit together. And then we're going to go to Animo Traveler, and we're going to be using their skill and their burst to do a lot of swirl damage. We want them to get the damage bonus increase from Faruzan's burst, and we're going to have them do a lot of the damage. Whenever the bursts end, we can go to Faruzan, we can use her skill to get energy back, we can keep enemies grouped together, we can drop Guoba in there to swirl some pyro around, we can go to Kaya and use his skill. We just want to keep the energy particles floating around from everybody's skills, so that way we can get the burst charged back up very quickly, so that way we can then do the same thing. Zhangling's burst, Kaya's burst, Faruzan's burst, and skill to maybe get some grouping. And then go to Traveler, use his skill as many times as his Sacrificial Sword will let us, and use his burst. That is what we want to do. Rinse and repeat. That is how that rotation would work. With using an on-field damaging Animo character, like in this instance, Animo Traveler, or Haizo, or Wanderer, or Zhao, we want to have some other elements to swirl together. Yes, with Cloud Retainer out, you can do like Faruzan, Zhao, Cloud Retainer, and then somebody else like Farina, and that's an insane team for Zhao to do a lot of damage. Same thing with Wanderer, same thing with Haizo. But if you don't have access to all of those characters, we want some elements to swirl around. So that is why we have off-field elemental applicators like Zhangling and Kaya, so that way we can swirl those elements and get, in this case, melt reactions. If we took Kaya out and put Barbara in, they'd be vaporized reactions. So that is going to be it for this video. If you did learn something, do be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I will see you in the next video.